Hello friends, I am Sarad Vaze, practicing chartered accountant for more than 38 years and handling professional misconduct cases for the last 15 years. In the last session, we have seen three reasons for the cases being filed against professionals. Now, today we'll see another 3 4 reasons which I have come across over the years. The fourth one is faintest of ink is stronger than the strongest of memories. We try to put everything in our mind, we try to put everything in our brain, but when it is to be retrieved, it is very difficult. Maybe for whatever reasons. Maybe the time gap between the event and the necessity to retrieval may be more than 2 3 years. But if we put that in writing, even if the ink has become faint, but still we can prove that we have taken adequate care and skill in coming to the particular professional conclusion. It may also happen that the work is being actually undertaken by a junior professional or accounts or audit assistants or article clerks or other trainees, and whatever problem they have come across, that problem has been discussed with you as a principal, you have applied your mind and you have taken the decision accordingly. After 2 3 years, and if you go through again those documents, again those statements, you fail to recognize or you fail to retrieve what were the reasons when you had taken that particular decision. But instead, if at that time, if you have noted down the reasoning for coming to a particular conclusion, even if after 4 5 years or so down the line, that ink has become faint, still it will be easier for to understand and yourself why you have taken a particular decision. It will be beneficial because in most of the cases, for a professional negligence where the audit is not performed as per the accounting standards or as per the auditing principles, then the institute calls for the audit working papers. And at the time of audit working papers, if you can produce these documents and if you can prove that what is the basis for coming to a particular accounting treatment, then it will be helpful to you that you are acted with due care and skill and you are not acted recklessly or negligently. So faintest of ink is much better than strongest of memories. That is certainly the case. Then nowadays, over the last 4 5 years or so, most of this, all of us professionals have become compliant professionals. In a sense, we had to adhere too many dates to comply. Especially, I am really surprised how the professionals practicing on the GST side or the filing with register of companies are taking over the burden or tension of various due dates laid down by the government, frequent changes in the due dates, as well as unreasonably high penalty for delay in uploading a particular document or uploading a particular form. Now, in these situations, in order to meet a particular deadline, decisions are taken in a hurried manner. Obviously, the only aim in mind is to safeguard the interest of our client, but in the process, there might be a negligence. To give an example again, which had occasion, in case of a partnership firm, it was on the last date, 29th September or 30th September, and it was the last day for filing the tax audit report. The auditor got the signature of, there were two partners in a partnership firm. The auditor got the signature of one partner and uploaded the tax audit report as well as the income tax return. The other partner was not agreeing to the accounts, so he had not signed it. He has filed a complaint. And before the disciplinary committee, the chartered accountant made a statement that it was the last day of e-filing of tax audit report and income tax return, and there was a huge loss. So the client would have suffered. So in order to safeguard the interest of the partnership firm, I have uploaded the accounts, balance sheet, tax audit report, etc. The partnership deed has specifically provided that the account shall be signed by both the partners. This basic statement which was there in the partnership deed was compromised just to comply with a particular due date. Unfortunately for that chartered accountant, at that time, the central government nominees were ex-tribunal member and sitting principal chief commissioner of income tax. They simply asked, it was whose loss? It was the loss of your client, not your loss. So when the partnership deed stated specifically that the balance sheet must be signed by both the partners, you have compromised that statement just to safeguard the interest of the client. So client, that means you have disclosed your negligence in not adhering to the requirement of partnership deed. Thereby, you are held as guilty. And unfortunately, that member has lost his 15 months of his practice. His name was removed for 15 months. Not only for this reason, there were others also. But in a sense, he tried to safeguard the interests of his client, but in the process, he suffered himself because time constraints, we professionals are overburdened, and we have to act upon this. We have to think of it, how to minimize our mistakes in such time compliant procedures laid down by various statutes. Then many times while finalizing the accounts or doing the audit, a common mistake is done, and that is we look accounting issue or auditing issue from tax angle. In fact, as all of us are aware that accounts has got nothing to do with taxation, although the income computation is dependent upon the accounts. The same case which I had just told you earlier, that professional made a mistake in finalizing the accounts because he did everything through income tax angle rather than from accounting and auditing point of view. It was no doubt a mistake, a gross negligence, so to say. Now, in that case, that partnership firm had made some 6 or 7 sales only in the year. Sales were of immovable properties, landed properties. There, the partnership firm purchased a big plot of land in acres, subdivided into various plots, and sold 6-7 plots in a year. Now, in that year, one of the plot whose book value, agreement value was 60 lakhs and stamp duty value was 120 lakhs. For whatever reason they might have sold it, we are not concerned with that. But the company passed, the partnership firm passed the accounting entry for 120 lakhs in books of accounts, which the professional auditor, chartered accountant accepted it, and accordingly the accounts were finalized. The other partner who had not agreed to sign the balance sheet, his simple question was that 60 lakhs is the agreement value, 120 lakhs is the stamp duty value, the accounting entry should have been made for 60 lakhs. For income tax purposes, we would have paid tax on 120 lakhs. That is the difference under 43 CA of the Income Tax Act. Now, in this situation, the profits are overstated by 60 lakhs. Partnership firm paid more income tax on the 60 lakhs simply because the professional auditor, chartered accountant, brought in income tax provision in the finalization of accounts in his report. So in tax audit also, you have to report it, nothing beyond that. You are not supposed to, because otherwise, in the next year, are you going to claim that 60 lakhs as a bad debt? Because the person with whom you had an agreement for sale of the landed property for 60 lakhs is going to pay you only 60 lakhs, not certainly 120 lakhs. So today in first year you are showing 120 lakh sale, in the next year you are going to say 60 lakhs as bad debts. Is it the way of working? So this is how we look for our accounting issues, our auditing issues only from taxation angle. We consider whether a particular expenditure is capital expenditure or revenue expenditure by applying the ratios laid down by various high courts and the Supreme Court in determination of a particular treatment in accounts. Accounts, audit, and taxation are independent of each other, and one should not make a confusion in coming to these three different issues. Then, the next reason which I come across is again lack of communication skills. I have found almost 99% professionals, for them it is very difficult to say no. Again, going back to the first reason, too much of faith with our client. So in one case, again I had occasion to deal with, not as a misconduct but as an auditor myself. The company intended to come out with a public issue. So they wanted to show a profit, but in fact there was a loss. So the management thought of simply multiplying the closing stock by 1.2%, that is 1.2, that means increasing the stock values by 20% arbitrarily, number one, and number two, to show interest receivable on overdue debtors. And the debtors were outstanding for more than 6 months, 9 months, even for 2 years also. So they calculated interest for last 2 years at the rate of 24%. Why 24%? Because the invoice was carrying that this invoice is to be paid within 30 days, otherwise thereafter you'll have to pay interest at the rate of 24%. So they calculated interest for 2 years, 1 year, 17 months, 16 months on different debtors, and they arrive at an X figure. Plus stock was overvalued by 20%, and the accountant informed me that these are the things which the management wants to do it. I firmly said, no, this is not acceptable. Otherwise, I resign, you get the things done from any other chartered accountant, I have no objection. Because increasing the closing stock arbitrarily is obviously not permissible. You should have a justification. Even the auditor is not answerable for valuation, but he is answerable for the overall profits. And number two, when you are not sure of getting the date, can you say that you will be getting the interest also? So when the original principal is not receivable, then who will pay you the interest? So for these two reasons, I put my foot firmly. Management has to accept it. Those entries were removed and we had a loss, and we said that okay, we'll postpone our public issue by another 1 or 2 years once we have a profit, but not the way in which the loss is to be converted into profit just for the sake of making a public issue, because in future if there is any problem, then obviously other than management, the auditor would have been in trouble. So lack of communication, I come across people simply go on accepting the assignments without realizing their professional capacity. What I mean to say by professional capacity? In a sense, frankly speaking, I am practicing for 38 years or so, but mainly in direct taxes and this disciplinary matter. If you ask me any question on GST related laws, I simply say I do not know, because my understanding is because of my ignorance, my client should not suffer. So you better speak to my partner who is well versed in GST and other laws. She will be able to guide you properly, but certainly not me. So I can very well say no to the topic, to the subject or to the issue which does not belong to my domain. I'm not saying that I am expert in that, but at least I can discuss, I can think on that, but which is totally unknown to me, certain fields. If you ask me questions on valuations, certainly I can't answer. So this is how one should be in a position to say no, where he himself is sure that he cannot handle this, he is not aware of the relevant law or practice. But what happens in young generations, they also say that beggars have no choice. So they go on accepting clients from diverse fields, from diverse subjects, and many times they make a mess of it. They are neither good at account, nor at audit, nor company law, nor taxation, nor cost of art, costing, etc. etc. So if you focus right from the beginning on a particular professional activity, and if you say no to other activities to which you are not that comfortable, that will save a lot, because in that case the negligence will not be on your part. Then one more problem which I have again come across is constraint in resources, infrastructure, manpower, and other assets like library, etc. In nowadays, if a professional wants to set up his practice, and if he wants to purchase office premises, it is very difficult to survive, because being a profession, you don't expect like a business to come out with a profit in the very first year itself. Your profession is progressing, you are not allowed to advertise. So in that case, it is very difficult to sustain in the practice by purchasing a property, by purchasing office premises. But not only premises are sufficient, we have to have a furniture, sufficient interior, place for sitting our assistants. Then each person to have a desktop or a laptop, at least 2-3 printers. Then that means all these infrastructures cost us substantially, and it is very difficult in the initial stages. And the second most difficult part to survive in practice is manpower. Our audit assistants, articles, or other trainees, they are not available in adequate numbers. Even if I accept an assignment, I have to think first whether I am in a position to complete it within the time allotted to me, within the time available with me, because I cannot do the vouching, I cannot do the checking of bank reconciliations. These things are to be taken care of by our juniors. And if I do not have juniors, then how can I do the work? Even though concurrent audits of nationalized banks, one bank requires a partner to be present for 5 days in a week in a bank, then how it is possible to accept such assignments? So limitation of manpower, limitation of infrastructure, now, and to survive in the profession, we start accepting any assignment even if we are not capable of completely handling it to our satisfaction, and in the process a negligence may crop in and we may be responsible for a professional misconduct. Again, another 3-4 reasons are yet to be discussed. We'll see it in next session. Thank you very much. I'll appreciate if you can communicate through your email sharadvazeytc@gmail.com. I would like to reply back, or I will get a feedback from you, and accordingly we can modify our sessions, lectures thereafter. Thank you very much.